Welcome back. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. Obviously, the big hubbub of the day is all about AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the esteemed congresswoman from New York, hailed by the media as the savior of the Democratic Party. So fresh, so faced. She is fresh, and she is faced, and she is knowledgeable, and she's so dumb. Here's what she said on an Instagram video. Yesterday, she was trying to compare detention of illegal immigrants at the southern border in humane conditions that are underfunded by Democrats. She was trying to compare that to, whatever, the Holocaust.
The United States is running concentration camps on our southern border, and that is exactly what they are. They are concentration camps. And if that doesn't bother you, we can have, okay, whatever. I want to talk to the people that are concerned enough with humanity to say that we should not, that never again means something.
She wasn't talking about the Holocaust, though, guys. Or maybe she was, and she was right. Those are the two alternative takes in the media, that she wasn't talking about the Holocaust. She was actually talking about the Boer War or something. Or alternatively, she was talking about the Holocaust, but it's totally justified. Amazing to watch people rush to her defense. Joining us on the line is Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, known far and wide as America's rabbi, the international best-selling author of 32 books, including The Israel Warrior, Fighting Back for the Jewish State, From Campus to Street Corner. Rabbi Boteach, thanks so much for joining the Ben Shapiro Show.
Ben, thank you for having me, and thank you for everything you do to promote American and, by extension, universal Jewish values. God bless you.
Well, I appreciate it. So let's jump right into AOC's comments. What did you make of her original comments? It seemed to me it was pretty obvious that she's talking about the Holocaust, considering not only does she mention concentration camps, she then drops the anti-Holocaust slogan, never again.
Let me first say that these are some of the most deplorable, rancid, and odious comments I have heard from an American lawmaker in memory. The Holocaust was the greatest crime in the history of the world. To compare anything to it is to trivialize the murder of 10,000 people per day. Between 1941 and 1945, the Jewish people experienced 3 9/11s on a daily basis. That she could call the American people guilty of perpetrating concentration camps when we liberated the concentration camps. AOC is both ignorant, but I think she also did this very intentionally. She's extremely calculating. She built up a global media platform in the space of a year. She knows exactly what she's doing. She used that terminology to draw attention to her comparison. So let's be clear. The Holocaust was about taking children in a boxcar for up to 10 days with nothing but a bucket to defecate. They were emaciated. They were surrounded by cholera and by typhus. They were brought to a selection ramp with a white glove SS officer who would send those children within 60 minutes of their arrival at the Birkenau train depot to a gas chamber where their lungs were filled with Zyklon B poison gas. And the history of the world, this kind of abomination has never been practiced. It is utterly revolting for an American congresswoman to desecrate the Holocaust with this disgusting comparison. And the fact that she has doubled down and has refused to apologize is doubly insulting. Never again refers specifically to genocide. The United States stopped the genocide. We are not guilty of a genocide.
Rabbi Boteach, one of the people who came out in defense of AOC, actually doubled down even more broadly than she did. That'd be Representative Gerald Nadler from New York. He tweeted, "One of the lessons from the Holocaust is never again, not only to mass murder, but also to the dehumanization of people, violations of basic rights, and assaults on our common morality. We fail to learn that lesson when we don't call out such inhumanity right in front of us." So what do you make of the argument that in order to stop a future Holocaust, we have to crack down early on the early signs? First of all, I'm not seeing the early signs, but what do you make of this?
Well, I find it astonishing that another congressman, Jerry Nadler, who, by the way, has the largest Jewish constituency of any representative in the House, would actually accuse the brave Border Patrol agents. Look, immigration is a legitimate debate, and we should not be separating parents from children, and America should be a sanctuary for the oppressed. I'm a Jew. I believe in all of that. But to say that American border officials need to be checked in their place before they become guilty of a possible genocide of people trying to enter do you understand how insane and offensive this stuff is? This is the same Jerry Nadler that was handpicked by Barack Obama to be the Jewish congressman who would support the Iran nuclear agreement, while Iran was threatening a second Holocaust throughout the negotiations. Even when Nadler decided he would vote for President Obama's Iran nuclear agreement, he never stipulated that there should be one condition, that Iran had to stop threatening to annihilate his people. His people. He is a Jew. He has, whatever the exact numbers is, 800,000 Jewish constituents. These are his people. He never even spoke out about Iranian genocidal intent. So I don't want to be unkind, but it seems that Congressman Nadler has a bit of a blind eye when it comes to really speaking out against genocide. So it's not all that surprising that he'd be the one who would rush to AOC's defense.
We're speaking with Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. He's the author of the new book, The Israel Warrior, Fighting Back for the Jewish State from Campus to Street Corner. He's also obviously incredibly well-known, probably the most famous rabbi in the country. Rabbi Boteach, one of the things that I've found astonishing is the Democratic Party's newfound casual treatment of anti-Semitism. It's really disappointing because you are obviously very friendly with, for example, Senator Cory Booker. Booker and others in the Democratic Party seem to be making room for anti-Semitism so long as it comes from the left. Many of the folks who claim to be pro-Israel and pro-Jewish have turned out not to be, making room for Jeremy Corbyn, siding with the Iran nuclear deal. What do you make of the move inside the Democratic Party to treat anti-Semites with kid gloves?
Well, Ben, let's remember what the Democratic Party was, which makes it even more painful. The Democratic Party produced Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who, yes, remains controversial because he did not bomb the tracks to Auschwitz, but he defeated Hitler. He engaged in Lend-Lease to make sure Churchill had the weaponry he needed to fight the Nazis. The Democratic Party produced people like my own senator from New Jersey, not Cory Booker, but Robert Menendez, one of Israel's greatest defenders in the Senate, who opposed the Iran nuclear agreement. Anti-Semitism should be fought by both parties. I can't tell you how painful it is to me personally that my dear friend Cory Booker, someone who was like a brother to me of over 25 years, voted for the Iran nuclear deal, and yet again, like Nadler, did not go to the floor of the Senate to at least condemn their genocidal intent. Since when is fighting racism and bigotry and anti-Semitism, 70 years after the Holocaust, since when is condemning the new threats against the Jewish people as we celebrate D-Day 75 and the sacrifices of tens of thousands of American soldiers to liberate Europe from the tyranny of Nazism? Since when does this become the mission of only one of our political parties? The Democrats have to join the Republicans in condemning this. I lived in England for 11 years. I was a rabbi at Oxford. I never could have imagined that an open anti-Semite like Jeremy Corbyn could be the head of a party. Even Tony Blair, the former head of the Labour Party and the Prime Minister for more than a decade of Great Britain, said that he's shocked that Corbyn is so openly anti-Semitic. So these are not political issues. And AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, weaponizing the Holocaust and politicizing the Holocaust to make a statement about immigration. I have no issue whatsoever with AOC getting up and saying, I utterly condemn President Trump's policies on immigration. That's my position. She has a right to say that. This is a legitimate campaign issue. What do we do about immigration? What do we do about the vast number of people who want to come to the United States? Should they be granted sanctuary? Should they not? I mean, these are all issues that we can debate on humane grounds and with American values. But to desecrate the Holocaust and the murder of 10,000 Jews per day by calling these detention centers concentration camps, everyone knows the concentration camps is a Holocaust term. Everyone knows that never again is a Holocaust term. She was absolutely referring to the Holocaust, and she was absolutely trivializing it.
Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, one more question for you. One of the things that I found fascinating from so many members of the political left these days is their willingness to, in their words, culturally appropriate things like the Jewish experience and the Holocaust and then use them in service of other ideals. So, in other words, the same people who will side with the Iran nuclear deal, the same people who will ignore or cheer on Hamas attacks, rocket attacks, the same people who will call for boycotts, divestment, and sanctions against Israel, targeting Israel for destruction, those same people will then invoke the legacy of Jews, including the Holocaust, in order to push their pet projects. The sort of attempt to take the suffering of Jews across history and currently in places like Israel, under the thumb of Islamic terrorists, and then use that for other purposes is pretty astonishing to me.
It's absolutely astonishing. I mean, 2 weeks ago, Israel appointed its first ever openly gay minister of justice. He's a friend of mine, Amir Ohana. Can anyone even conceive of someone being openly gay in any capacity in Arab society, let alone being a minister of justice in a Middle Eastern government. And yet you see LGBT activists who openly condemn Israel when they would be slaughtered in the streets of nearly all of Israel's neighbors. Or the Black Lives Matter movement. Of course Black Lives Matter. Of course white lives. All of humanity are created equally in the image of God. But it was Martin Luther King who said that hatred of Israel is fueled by anti-Semitism. Why would movements that promote human rights, with us Jews and our African-American brothers and sisters being at the forefront of those who are targeted for bigotry, how could they not create common cause with the Jewish people? How could they condemn Israel when it's the only bastion of human rights, democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of congregation, freedom of conscience in the entire Middle East? How could they condemn Israel? We live in astonishing times. None of this is logical. None of this makes sense. And it just goes to show you that anti-Semitism takes so many forms. It just has so many different incarnations. And Ben, I'm a 52-year-old rabbi, father of 9 children, grandfather of 5. And my mother was alive during the Holocaust. My father would think I was alive during the Holocaust. If you would have told me that in my lifetime I would see a resurgence of anti-Semitism throughout the world, where the German government said recently that Jews should not wear yarmulkes in Germany 70 years after the Holocaust for fear of being attacked. If you would have told me that Ilhan Omar would openly accuse Israel of buying Jews in the United States, not Israel, of buying American politicians, if you would have told me that Rashida Tlaib, these are congresswomen of the United States, openly accusing Jews of no loyalty to the United States, basically of treason, that we would put Jewish interests, Israel, as if they were in conflict. They're not. Israel's America's foremost ally. But accusing us of treason or calling for boycotts of Israeli businesses, which was the beginning of Nazism, as has been pointed out by many people, I would never have believed it. And that's why we have to stop this in its tracks. We have to stop the slow creep. And I should really say to all my non-Jewish brothers and sisters, this is not a Jewish issue. It's not a Jewish issue. Just as during the Second World War, it was not a Jew. When Hitler came after the Jews first, and then it was everyone else later. Ben, I was just at the 75th commemoration of D-Day. I was at the American Military Cemetery in Normandy. Does everyone realize there are boys from Kentucky, there are boys from South Dakota, buried thousands of miles away from home in France? What are they doing buried in France? And they went there because later Hitler would come after the Americans too. It was Hitler who declared war on the United States, not the reverse, 3 days after D-Day, 3 days after Pearl Harbor. So it starts with the Jews, but it goes to everyone else. And we're asking all people of conscience, all people of goodwill, stand with the Jewish people against this vile new wave of Jew hatred.
Well, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, thanks so much for your time. Check out his book, The Israel Warrior, Fighting Back for the Jewish State from Campus to Street Corner. Rabbi Boteach, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. God bless.